Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and your guide along the way. And today we're talking to JellyBoy the Clown. What has he been up to? And in terms of myself, what have I been up to? Well, this year has been a lot of travel. I've been back and forth to America twice. I've had the pleasure there of working with Mad Apple, as I've said many times. And that is such an excellent thing because it combines two things for me. One is that I have to miss my family because I'm away, but that opens up the time for me to get up in the morning, make my coffee, and then just start writing. So I have been writing up a storm, and as you will hear today, because one of the most enjoyable things about talking to JellyBoy, apart from hearing about all of his stuff, is to talk to another person who writes about circus and freak show and this kind of stuff. So really nice to talk to another fellow performer who has ventured further than me into the publishing process, and we talk about that quite a bit. I've also been to Australia this year, so for 2 months with Paul Dabec's London Calling, which was also totally awesome. And on that note, I've also recorded an interview with Paul, who's an old friend of mine, and those of you who have heard me talk about the plate spinning act that I did, they've heard of him at least then, and I've maybe heard of London Calling as well, that I've mentioned on the podcast. But anyway, without further ado, let's get cracking on talking to JellyBoy the Clown. Since we spoke last, I guess you did all of your amazing new stunts on the America's Got Talent.
Yeah, I did that. That was I guess that was last year. And it was pretty intense. I mean, I had come out with my book, which is what we connected on.
Yeah. And
because the book was out, I really wanted to reach a wider audience. So I kind of went for broke and just was like, fine, I'll go on TV and see what happens. And it didn't really do what I thought it was going to do.
Yeah.
It didn't sell books, for instance. But it did a whole lot of other stuff that I didn't expect.
That's really interesting. Well, I was just thinking I would be amazed if it sold books. I don't know if it's just in my mind, but it's like the general audience of America's Got Talent. I don't know if I wonder, do they see any depth to us who come on and do crazy things? Do they just think it's like, oh yeah, the guy came on, he swallowed the sword or whatever, and then they think nothing more of it or whatever, so I don't know. It doesn't surprise me that it didn't generate book sales.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I thought that somehow, go on, do something intriguing, be a wild character, and then maybe there'll be a handful of people out of the millions of people that watch you who Google you, and then they go down the rabbit hole and kind of take a little dive and find that, oh wow, this person is an author and they wrote a book, maybe I'll order it, and I was thinking okay, well, if millions of people watch the show, maybe 100 people might take the little dive.
Anyway, but I think that it's also they never. I can't now remember. I did watch your clips, but I can't remember. Did you say that you were allowed to say that you've written a book? I guess they.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't allowed to say. I wasn't allowed to say that.
No.
And I wasn't really. I wasn't allowed to promote anything.
No.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to really promote myself.
Yeah, I mean, I guess all of us have this love-hate relationships with these kinds of gigs. You get your face and your name out there, but I don't know. It's kind of odd that they have their format of what you do, and then whatever stuff you can get from it needs to be fully extraneous. You can't sort of have any
it's a kind of funny give and take, where I feel like they're asking a lot, and not.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot like working in a show where you have a producer and a director, and they have a vision, and sure, they'll take your character and they'll put it in their formula, and so you're still you, and you're still doing what you do, but it's like, in that brand.
Yeah. But you mentioned some good stuff came out of it, or something did come out of it.
The best thing that came out of it was the Guinness Book of World Records show.
Yeah.
Called me up and said they we saw your chainsaw sword on America's Got Talent. We want to make a world record out of it.
Because you chopped you chopped the wood at the talent show?
Well, I chopped a lot of fruit.
Fruit. Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, I chop wood with the chainsaw. I chop. Yeah, it's okay. You can come through. Come on through. All right. Yeah, but now I do chop wood.
You do chop wood. Yeah.
With the chainsaw attached to the sword, but on America's Got Talent, I chopped a watermelon.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like fixed to the table, and it like fell off the table, and I had to chase it, and I got on my hands and knees, and with the sword down inside me, and chopped it on the floor, and it was awesome. Because chaotic.
It's great. It suits your character, JellyBoy. It's the kind of stuff that you would, now that it has happened, where you go, oh, okay, well, I guess it's pretty risky to walk around all that much with it, but but still, it's a gift from the clown gods when you're crawling around, because it's completely demented with the chainsaw running in front of your face, and
and then afterward, I slipped in the juice when I was like running up. To swallow the flamethrower sword in front of the judges, and it was just so funny because I was like, wow, I'm on my ass, and then I just got up, and I knew then everything was fine, because it was like all the things that went wrong were just like so hilarious. And so what the Guinness World Records wanted me to do was they were like, how many watermelons can you cut in a minute?
Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah, and so I said, like, I have no idea, but I think at least 10. I'm sure I could cut at least 10, And so they were like, all right, we'll set the world record at 10. And so then I started experimenting. And that's part of, like, the creative process that I wanted to talk with you about.
Yeah.
It's like, when we're making a stunt or an act out of props and stunts, when we're like coming up with that and brainstorming, like there's the technical aspect that are part of the creative process, so for instance, like, how do you mount a piece of fruit that you're going to cut with a chainsaw? What's the best way to do it? And there's trial and error and all that stuff. And anyway, I decided to go with pumpkins instead of watermelons, because watermelons are like really messy and really juicy and really sticky. And I thought if I ended up doing like, more than 10 watermelons, it would just be like so gory.
Yeah.
So it's all going to be gory anyway. It's like with a chainsaw. So it was around Halloween that I was doing the experiments. So pumpkins were readily available. And I decided to try. And I had a whole bunch of pumpkins, and I had them on this table, and I lined them up all around the table, and I took the chainsaw just to see how many I could cut, and I thought that they wanted me to just cut them, like cut into them pretty much all the way, but then I realized, like, oh, my chainsaw could hit into the table.
Oh yeah, that's bad.
And it could be kickback, And then they said, we want you to cut them completely in half. It has to be that they are completely cut in half and one end falls down. So then I realized, like, oh, I have to put these pumpkins on spikes or pitchforks or something. Oh, yeah, wow. So I had some pitchforks that was mounting, because we were working on a bed of pitchforks at one point. And so I had these pitchforks in the basement, and I decided to use those, and was like, hang half the pumpkin off and have half the pumpkin on the spike, and have some negative space underneath, so that if you got the chainsaw, you could cut the thing completely in half, and the chainsaw could go all the way through and down the bottom.
Yeah.
That was the first big kind of eureka moment, because at first I was just like, oh yeah, you put the piece of fruit on a table, and then you come at it with the chainsaw like Gallagher comes at it with a, hammer. Like you're just destroying fruit.
Yeah. It's so interesting though, because I often have it there the same way. I start out and then you think, oh yeah, I have the measure of this problem or whatever, and then you go. So I did something similar when I was I do a sword swallowing act, and I chop some fruit or whatever in there, and I had this idea of going, well, it would be funny to have a melon on my head and then chop the melon whilst on top of my head. So you just swing it. So that was the initial idea. And then I was going, well, how are you actually going to do that? How are you going to attach that melon to your head? Like, is it going to be on a strap under your chin, or like what's it going to be, or whatever? And I thought, maybe one of those little fakir beds, like a bed of nails that you use for flower arrangements. I thought maybe I could get one of them and put a strap on it. And so I ended up in the end changing it to a cucumber and changing it to put it into a fez that had a strap around under my chin.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Go flying, right?
Sorry?
You have to mount it, otherwise it will just go flying.
Yeah, that's right. So, but then the initial idea was that I was going to do this, and then I would do the sword swallow. But then once I started sort of playing with it, also going a little anticlimactic. You chop it, and then I take a bow, and the thing slides off, and that was all right. But then I went, if I do a cucumber, then I can chop it several times. Yeah. So that was like, then you can kind of, so that was like the next step of that kind of act. And so there's always a transformation that happens from idea to when you actually then get the props, like you going, okay, well, watermelon, it's clear that you hadn't tested it quite enough before you went on, so that it just, stuff happened that you went, oh my Lord.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because a lot of my ideas, they just come like into my head, and I always keep a sketchbook, and I draw little cartoons, and I write things down, and then from those cartoons, I build the props, or I'll get together with a friend who I know's got a good tool workshop in their basement or something like that, and I'll be like, I got this idea, and maybe you can help me put it together, and I'll sit there with a friend and put it together from the cartoons and stuff.
Yeah.
And the chainsaw idea I had for many years, but I never did anything with it. It was just in an old sketchbook, and I was talking to one of the producers of the show, America's Got Talent show, and they were asking me, like, well, what's the third thing that you can do? Like, I know you got the flamethrower sword, and, I know you've got Tesla coil lightning machine, but what third thing can you do? And they're like, anything, just say whatever wild idea pops in your head. I was like, well, I always wanted to swallow a sword that had a chainsaw attached to it. They're like, well, that's it. It was a chainsaw. So then it was like, okay, well, how do you attach a sword to a chainsaw, and how does it feel when the chainsaw is running, and like, there's some kind of when you hit into something and you have like a kickback, like what is that kind of a sense feel like? Is it really dangerous? Like, is it going to vibrate and like, lacerate your your throat, or
Yeah. Well, how did you go about making? Because I've seen a couple of different solutions to how to put juggling handles onto. How did you actually solve that? Did you make a kind of shoe for it that sticks on the outside of the chainsaw? Or?
Yeah, well, that would be a good thing to do. What I did was I mounted a piece of wood to the chainsaw, kind of like took the chainsaw apart, so we're able to get inside and bolt a piece of wood to the chainsaw, and then put the chainsaw back together with the wood on it, and then that piece of wood allowed me to put some screws in it that I could bolt the sword to it. And then there's like a chin guard, so it's like a thing that rests right on my chin with some cork, and that keeps it quite stable, because with the chin and with the sword in the throat, and then I'm holding it with one hand, and then I got the other hand for the trigger. It's 3 points of contact. So it does stabilize the chainsaw, but then the thing that you're cutting has to be really stable, otherwise things get all wacky.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, so there's a lot of potential for it going pear-shaped, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, so maybe not the act for the general show, or do you do it?
Well, I can do it. I can do it a lot now. Now I've got the practice, and I know how the mechanics work, and I ended up doing 17 pumpkins in 1 minute.
You didn't think about. Because I know those Guinness Book of Records and stuff, they'll have you on again to break your own record. You never thought that you might want to do like 12 or something so that you could come back and break it again?
I should have. I just went kind of berserker. I just was like, all right, I'm just going to see. Because there was 20 of them on the table. And I was like, I'm just going to try my hardest to get straight to the end of the table and do all 20.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. And a lot of times when the show happens, I kind of lose myself.
Yeah.
And I should have just been like, yeah, I'm just going to cut it off at a certain point, or like, kind of ham it up at a certain point. But I was just, horse blind.
Chances are now that you have practiced it too is that you could probably do 18 or 19.
Yeah, I
remember seeing it. It's like there was a couple of times where you cut it very thin sliver, or you had to go back and cut it again, or whatever.
Yeah, I had up to cut it again.
You had to cut upwards. That's right. I remember that, and I was like going, "Oh my God, that is just such a terrible situation." To sort of you've. Because I don't know, when I'm not as an accomplished sword swallower as you, but to me, like I can't. When I swallow my samurai sword, I can't flip the sword and have the bend go the other way. I mean, I guess I kind of could, but that would make me really uncomfortable. Like the different swords.
Yeah. And
so cutting opposite would make everything push in a different way, and
it pushes in a different way, in a different direction. And so
how was that?
I had to really get into like this style of breathing while the sword, so it's like this kind of circular breathing, or at least breathing in with my nose.
Yeah. And
sure that no kind of saliva goes down my throat while I'm doing it, with the cutting and stuff, and so it becomes a little bit more like second nature.
Yeah. Tricky, really tricky.
Yeah, it's tricky, and what was the problem was that the pumpkins ended up being a lot bigger than I thought they'd be, because my chainsaw is only a certain length, and the chainsaw, if it's going to make a cut in a pumpkin, it has to be bigger than the pumpkin that it's cutting into. Otherwise, you have to cut it twice.
Yeah,
and I had to come up and cut it a second time with those. So if I had smaller pumpkins that were like smaller than the blade of my chainsaw, I could probably do more. You know, and it's,
what about putting a longer blade on it?
well, I could, but then it would be heavier. The chainsaw would be heavier. So I thought, okay, well, now I've practiced with this smaller chainsaw. I could get a big chainsaw and just, you know, it would look crazy, you know, the giant chainsaw on your face.
Yeah, but we could also split the difference. I mean, because when you take the chain off or whatever, it's relatively easy to take that sort of blade thing out. And can you have because you don't need a big engine on it. You don't never needed a bigger engine to cut the pumpkins. But like just that, right. I don't know what it's called, the
blade,
the blade kind of before you put the actual chain on. But does the actual just the blade come in different sizes or so? Because that's kind of a
the mechanics of like, you know, how to change out that part of the chainsaw.
So we've been with my father-in-law. We did that quite a bit. Take that off. And when you're cleaning the chainsaw, that's relatively easy to take that blade off, as far as I remember.
Okay. And then you would like buy another chainsaw?
No, it was never broken.
Buy a spare part.
When they sharpen the thing when you're out chopping wood. He lives off the grid, so he chops all of his own wood and everything in his own forest.
Well, he probably has a really good like gas-powered chainsaw.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, and this one's an electric. This one's like an electric chainsaw, and you know they're not quite as great of a machine as some of the gas powered chainsaws. You know,
it's true.
They're battery powered.
It's part of capitalism's idea of making you need to buy a new thing and not be able to fix things when they break. It's like that little bit is broken. Oh yeah, that's easy. You just buy a new one. And it's like, well, it's this tiny little bit that's broken. Why don't we just replace it? And it's so hard to get replacement parts to all this stuff. So I can understand that.
Yeah, you'd have to get them on the internet, you know, like from somebody who just has a passion for taking things apart and putting things back together.
Yeah. But anyway, when you were talking about it, with the chin guard and everything, it reminded me of back in, when was that though? Maybe it was 2003 or something. We made a thing for the Space Cowboy, Shane Hultgren. He swallowed a sword, kind of like bayonet length thing, and that also. So we welded that to a metal that had a chin.
So he could lift weights with it, was it?
Yeah. Well, he lifted it was so he could lift weights, but we lifted gas bottles because we'd used that previously. Me and him did a nipple lift with a beer keg, and beer kegs are just so great. I mean, when they're empty, the big ones that we used, they were sort of about 11 or 12 kilos or something, so not so much, but you could easily...
Not so heavy, but really big and impressive.
It's just a big, solid metal thing that when you take it in, you put it on the ground, a little theatrical, but with a hollow stage or whatever, you just go gank, and it's an impressive thing. So that was what set us on the idea of using the gas tank. So we did that first, and then first we did it without fire, and then eventually he went on to have fire squirting on the end and just turning with this. So then he could swallow it, and he could have the additional points of contact by holding on to the actual bar. No, he didn't spin it. Not that I know of, but that would be cool. But because first when you said, I put the wood on the chainsaw kind of underneath and then put the blade under, and I was wondering whether that would put the saw sort of off balance or so. But I guess once you're holding on to it, you can counteract that.
Yeah, and once you're holding on to it, it's like the chainsaw's up here, and if it's balanced on the chin and it's at a certain angle, I can even take my hands away.
Yeah, wow.
And I could still hold it swallowed.
Yeah, like a balance almost. So I mean, that's pretty awesome to just swallow it down and do the present. Put your arms out as it's sticking out of your thing, and then go. Okay, let's go do the counter.
Yeah, and then grab it,
whatever, and then grab it and go for the chop. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. It's It's an interesting thing too, because it's like, yeah, you are swallowing a chainsaw in a sense. It's like you're in that territory where you're like, it's like you're not, of course, swallowing the blade, but it's still that, like, it's
still balanced on your face, and the vibrations are going through you, and the vibrations are going through the blade that's inside you, and it's a different experience.
Yeah. No, that's true, but it's an interesting thing of because when you're designing stunts or so, then that's often where it ends as well. Like so you go, okay, I'm gonna swallow the chainsaw and cut something, and then you're doing this process. You adapt and solve the problems of swallowing, of mounting the sword, and then learning how to swallow it, and then learning how to cut it. But when you're doing sideshow stuff, and to my most of the stuff that we did with a Happy Sideshow as well, it was like that's what you did. What you saw, what you see is what you get, and a lot of the patter or spiel that Shep Huntley would do was like, here we have one of these, and this is the dingo trap. It's used as a tool on the farm, but it's like it squeezes at 200 pounds per square inch. Or so you're sort of explaining everything, what happens. And then, and I'm going to put my arm in it, and then you put the music on, and then we would do it. So that's kind of what I feel like. It's almost like level one of kinds of presentations that you can have. It's like a magician. If you don't know what to say, you can go, here, I have a deck of cards. You can see they're all different. Now I want you to take one of your hands, stick it out, and then pick one of the cards out of the deck. Look at it, and you go. So you're basically narrating what you are already seeing or whatever. So it's but you have this interesting character and stuff. Do you like when you because first thing we think of a design of a trick or a stunt or whatever that we're going to do, and then like how far do you go into further into styles of presentation, or like is there a metaphoric resonance with what you do that would excite the audience, or that so that you do one thing that is. It's a clear, solid image, but do you do stuff that then points at it so that people go, "Oh, there's something more going on here"?
Yeah. That's what we try. We try to do.
Yeah.
Is present the character, and present some kind of a scenario or a story that goes along with the actual stunt. But at first, of course, you're presenting your object that you're going to use, and you want people to see it and know what it is very clearly, like not to use it so fast that they don't get a sense of what this thing is, or what the odds are, or what's at stake. And then, of course, when I present myself, I try to be confusing. At first, I try to be a little tricky. It's like, oh, you think this is what I am, but it's not what I am, And then I'll try to pull him in like that, and then once I've got him, I'll be like, oh, you think it's scary, but it's really not scary. It's actually quite silly, Yeah. Or you think it's really silly, but it's actually like the most dangerous thing that I've ever done,
Yeah. That's great. That's interesting to have this sort of reversal or so. Yeah, I like to play a lot with doing something that is seemingly silly and say or do or in some way point at it so that you look at it in a more sublime kind of way, or you go, oh, this is much deeper than what I actually thought. So you're presenting it, and it might be silly objects, or a giant die, or my claim of having an invisible egg, and it all starts out and it's very silly and it's very stupid. But then as it goes on, you actually go, oh, this is actually quite beautiful, and I have a child out that helps with it, and then it becomes about imagination and believing in things that you can see that others can't see, that you then can make into reality and make other people see it as well. So yeah, I like that as well, like where this sort of twist, and I like it in the clown, of course. The clown, you come out and people's immediate image or so is the clown comes out and is silly and we're laughing. But I love,
or they think like, oh, this is terrifying. This guy's like one of those clowns that's going to eat my soul or something like that. And then they realize, oh, I can actually feel safe with this guy.
That's really interesting. So that stereotype, you must, on being a sideshow clown, you must face that more. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it happens a lot when I'm out, because I don't take my makeup off, and I just, when I'm doing a lot of shows, I generally I'll ride the subway in my clown makeup, or I'll be out in real life, out and about, not in the theater setting. And, they get some wild reactions. People scream, or they know that their friend is afraid of clowns. So they'll motion to me to sneak up on their friend or something like that. And, that I know that people are scared, just because, they'll physically have a reaction. Some people will really run away. And some audiences too, there's people in the audience that as soon as you come out, there's that kind of gasp. And I know I have to do something funny or kind of ironic to get their attention. Like for instance, when I do the eye hook act,
yeah,
that's a horrible thing to watch.
Yeah.
But it's also very inspiring and intense to see somebody push their eyelids to do a strongman act. Yeah. So I always do it to George Michael, Careless Whisper, to make it more accessible to people, more comic.
That's right. You gotta, when people, it's me when I say I'm going to do a dislocation. I say it very soon after I've entered the stage. Then people, a big part of the audience kind of go, I don't actually want to see that. If they're there to see me, then they're all excited. If there's a tattoo convention, they're like, yeah. If it's that kind of audience, but there will be when I'm performing with Cirque du Soleil here, and that's very general public, So I say that I'm going to do it, and then they go, I don't think so. I don't feel comfortable about this. But then it's actually
hide their face.
Yeah. 7, 8, 9, 8 minutes until I actually going to do it. But I leave it there as this element of unease. And my comedy and that sort of, I think of it as disarming them. They come out and you say it first, so it's there as a thing. But then over time, you get to like me as a character, and then you start to trust me or whatever. But I warn them straight in the beginning, and it's always there as that element underneath. So with you as well, you come out, and then they go, oh my Lord, it's a clown. And they have their reaction, and then you somehow have to sort of disarm or diffuse this tension and go, it's going to be safe.
Yeah, exactly.
When did you start doing the? Do you think of the face as being JellyBoy's face? Were you called JellyBoy before the face came, or did they come at the same time?
Well, I was JellyBoy before I knew anything about clown makeup, but I was JellyBoy the clown. So I was a clown without makeup at first.
Yeah.
I had clown costumes, and I had, weird hair, and I even had a clown nose, but I didn't have any makeup at first.
Yeah.
And I was a rock and roll musician. So, I was singing and writing songs and playing with a band, and we were turning our band into a variety show. And so we wanted to be like a full-on theatrical experience, all set to the live music. So we invited other artists in, and one of the other performers that came in was into being a magician, and also had a clown character and was into sideshow, and he taught me about clown makeup. And so when I made my clown face, it kind of just it stuck, and I always put that on, and it's slightly changed over the years, but it's generally stayed pretty steady.
Yeah, when you've done it for a long time, it's like your face underneath the mask, my face, has changed as well. From when I started doing rackets, if we just use that as an example, started doing that in 1998. And I looked like much more like a boy then, you know? And then things change along the way, so I guess it's fair enough that your clown face at least subtly changes over time.
Yeah, we all change over time. But how did you get started with the tennis racket? Was it something you'd seen somebody else do, or was it something that you came up with on your own?
It was actually, like I probably said that on the podcast before, but I was doing shows in Edinburgh, and I used to do some contortion stuff with some handcuffs, and I would do contortion, bending my arms around with the handcuffs on, and then in the end I juggled and ate an apple standing on top of something wearing the handcuffs. That was like my street show. 1998, I was in Edinburgh, went out, did my crowd build, got my crowd ready to start, turn around to grab my suitcase to get my props and get started, and someone had stolen my suitcase from behind me, walking by on the sidewalk. So next day was a very big day, Fringe Sunday. You could go and set up down at this big sort of carnival style thing where you could just set up, find a spot, and then just finish your show and then do another one. So I did 6 shows that just on back to back, but I didn't have any props, and that day was coming up the next day. But I had a straitjacket in my backpack that I wasn't using in the show, and my friend suggested I should do some of those contortion things that I did with the handcuffs, but use a coat hanger, one of the wire coat hangers, which we had in the van that we were staying in. So I was like, and some of the stuff that later on ended up being in the rackets are there from that first day of 6 shows, with spinning the arm around and doing the gut suck where I take my stomach in, which used to be a staple of the show. So some of those were there. So that's how it started. Then that same year I was approached by a guy called John Kamikaze that ran the Kamikaze Freak Show back in the 90s. And he asked me if I wanted to be the rubber man in his show. So when the others left to go back to Australia, I stayed on in Edinburgh and did shows and performed with those guys for 2.5 years or whatever. And he was the one that said, the coat hanger is all right, but you can't really see it. You know, you have it and it sort of digs into your skin and everything. So it's got that kind of uncomfortability with, it must be uncomfortable because it's like the wire has its own thing. But he was the one that said you should go through a racket.
Yeah.
Which I knew that others had done, but I don't know if I don't have a full recollection of seeing somebody doing it.
Right. It's kind of like one of those things that I'm not sure what the origins of it are.
Yeah.
But it's like a staple that a lot of people use, but your act is specifically your own and very well, honed and developed. And also has a lot of room for, it seems like it has room for improv, though a lot of the improv seeming moments might be, at this point, like choreographed and have come from old times when you did accidentally do it and it worked. And so you kept it in the show. That's
right. I've been doing it so much that it's, in the beginning, there was more improv and more repetition. I would do, because people laugh. If I fall, they laugh. So then I'd do like 3 or 4 falls or whatever But then, because there were several steps as well to the development, from going through one thing that lasts just a couple of minutes and you go through and there's a couple of points and you go through to how it ended up being 2 rackets and all this stuff. But the thing that really fleshed out the act and made it what it is, 2 big things. One was that I started doing 2 rackets. I bought another racket that was going to be a spare in case the other one broke. But knowing so little about it, I bought it and it was too big. Brought it on tour anyway. And then at some point later on, backstage somewhere in Belgium or Holland or something, I was playing with that thing after the show and went, I can put my leg through. And then the other guys in the show said, it's not as impressive as doing the small one. It's still better. Okay. Put it in the case. And then I think it took another 3 months before I had the idea that, if I do that, put my leg through and everything, and I start by doing that, then the second one can go follow the other one. So that one goes off and the other one. So it took me a few months to sort of come up with that, because I liked the idea, but I was also going like, it's kind of weird to go, now it's going to go through one racket and now it's going to go through one which is smaller in a different way. And it's like sort of going, we already saw that. I mean, in one way, that's sort of what sword swallowing is too, I guess. Is now I'm going to swallow this and I'm going to swallow something else. So it's all in how you did it.
Right.
But when I then... So that was the big step. Okay, now it's 2. And then I go, okay, that's great. And I did that for a while. And then I was doing another tour, doing something else. I was actually wanting to do a microphone chaos routine whilst trying to play the saw. And I'm playing the thing, and then in the end I was going to put the music on, and it's a beautiful track comes on, but then I've got to stop it and all that. And then next time when the music comes on, it was this drum and bass track that I played on top of, and I dropped the saw and cut one of my fingers off, and turns out it was my dick. It's like, so that gag was in. So all those gags have been used in other things, but I practiced a lot with the mic stand to learn a bunch of gags. But as it was, I just could not make at that point, this was in 1999, could not make, or at the time didn't have the chops to make the microphone chaos look like it was real. So it just fell completely flat. So I removed the mic thing and just played the music as the opening of the show on the saw. But then on that same tour where I've gone, okay, well, that doesn't work, so I'll just play the saw because that's nice. I had a real sort of carnival-y, waltzy track, and that was great. So I just had that as the opening of the thing, played the saw, had a couple of little gags, but laid off the microphone stuff. But I'd done all the rehearsals with it. And during that tour, whilst standing on one leg on the stool like I do, speaking in the thing, speaking in a microphone, doing the routine, some of those things I was standing there with a mic stand, and now whilst standing on one leg and I started to do the chaos with the mic, now they believed it and it started to be funny immediately. I didn't think of it the first day of the show, but I had this practice and these gags and these things that I wanted to do with it. None of them actually, that was like, because the other act was sitting down, the starting and whatever. But anyway, so then that sort of found its way into the next act. So in a certain sense, it's like, it's a stand-up comedy kind of act. I do a bunch of comedy. It's like I say a lot of stuff. A lot of the act is talking. So there's that. I have the confetti that goes all the way through, which is another sort of layer that has its own sort of journey. Then I do a contortion act where I squeeze through the 2 rackets and all of that. And then... So that was already kind of a lot going on. It didn't feel like the act was a thin act before I added the slapstick. But then it's almost like you added the slapstick to it as well. So now there's many layers. So that's one element. And the second element that really solidified this from it not just being impro and going on, because sometimes I did. When we were doing the Happy Sideshow, there was times when it took 20 minutes. And they just went outside and had a little number out at the back and just like waiting for me to finish. And I'm like, guys, I'm done. Where are you? Yeah. Then I joined Circus Oz, and they went, we need it to be this length. And I think maybe I did 13, 14 minutes or something there. And then I joined La Clique, and they wanted it shorter, and I did this 11.5-minute thing. And I did that then, that 11.5, so 12 minutes with the intro and the exit. I did that for 12 years. Not allowed to add any length of time, but I could add whatever I wanted to within it.
Within that, freedom.
So that's where it is. There's not 4 falls. 1 fall is on the stage. 1 fall is off the stage. Like if is at all possible to fall.
Yeah, everything has to be special.
So that each of the things, so that you get the maximum variety of chaos. and there's no indulgence in where I do the same thing again and again or whatever, which has its own comedy. Like you try 3 times and then you can make it or so, but I've sort of removed all of that sort of stuff to go for the maximum amount of variety within it. So that's the evolution of that act.
Yeah, the freedom that you can get inside of a structure like that.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
So that's why there's not really proper impro anymore, because that said, there's new material in it now that has come out just since I started performing here in Vegas with Mad Apple.
Yeah, that's cool. That's how you know that the act is actually alive.
Yeah.
That it's evolving, always evolving, and you could see a video of yourself doing it years ago and you'd be like, oh, I used to do that.
Yeah.
Or, that kind of thing. And I've totally got a few of those acts that have come together.
Oh.
They're evolved into something crazy later.
You just froze there. You just froze. You got a few that have come together.
Come together out of improvs of like where I'll do these kind of one-off acts. And the one-off acts go away, but there's elements of those one-off acts that I kind of collect that I think are the best parts of them. And then I put them in like I've got this one act that's I do to Black Sabbath, and it's a burlesque act.
Oh, yeah.
But it starts off with like I'm in a black cloak and I've got layers and layers and layers of costumes on underneath that cloak, and it's all leading up to this mental floss routine with a glass of wine. But at first I've got almost like a lampshade on my head underneath the black cloak, and then the lampshade's like underneath that is a monkey in a wig with aviator goggles on, and then under that is Batman with a clown mask on, and underneath Batman is the devil, like dressed as an old woman, and then the devil turns into me, and then I'm dressed as a man, and then I take off my clothes and I'm dressed as a woman, and then I take off those clothes and I've just got these pink underwear on with fishnets, and I reach into my underwear and pull out the fish tube and then stick it up my nose and go crazy with the mental floss
in the end.
And then drink the wine in the end, and make sure that I drink the wine perfectly on time with like the ending of the song, like it's like a race against time to get to the end of the song and drink the wine, and the audience is all invested that it's going to happen, and then it happens. And but those masks, they were all from different acts, and then one day I just had the idea to combine all the masks and make one big crazy burlesque act.
I think this is an important element of my artistic process and artistic processes in general. I think it's they say the harder you work, the luckier you get. So I was working really hard on a routine, and then I went out and the audience told me, that's not going to work. We don't like that. And then I was salvaged, as you do, because you're like doing a couple of shows, and I was going, that's really dying. And it was the opening act. So I couldn't have that flatness for the start, because then you can't win them back or whatever. Or like it's hard. So now this was in as a sort of as a possibility, like it was floating around as a possible that hadn't actualized itself. And you've done all the masks, and you started to do so you have these things around, and then once you think of I'm going to change, because that's the thing with burlesque, most burlesque or most stripping or whatever, it's the face stays the same. So it's an innovation in that way. Like you go, actually, what would it look like if that also changes? If all
peel my face.
Yeah, like because it's a natural extension, and in one way, when you say it, you go, it seems so obvious, but it is not obvious at all.
Yeah.
But it's great when you put that on. It's like you're transforming, like one of those animal.
Yeah, a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so and then I was thinking about as far as the creative process goes, like we have these acts, and then a lot of times as an artist, you want to do something bigger. So, you know, you want to make a whole show, or, you know, with a collection of acts, or you want to write a book about, you know, your philosophy of showmanship, or you want to write a book that's a memoir, or you want to write, you know, some kind of fantasy story. And in my case also, we wanted to make movies.
Yeah.
Because my brother, who I do shows with all the time, he went to film school, and so he's always been into making movies, you know. So we made a horror movie. At one point, it was like a sideshow horror movie called the Freak Show Apocalypse, the Unholy Sideshow.
Yeah.
And that was it's a very B movie. It's not a great movie, but in that it's a cult kind of a movie because it's like so bad that it's good. But then we made documentaries. Like the first documentary that we made was about how I was trapped in a burning building and got all burned up, and it's called The Clown's Recovery. It's about how, you know, I survived this fire and then recovered, and my brother started making a documentary as soon as I was in the hospital. And it's like I was supposed to perform at Ripley's Believe It or Not the next day and Coney Island, but I didn't make it to either of those places. You know, in Times Square, Ripley's Believe It or Not with Albert Cadabra, and then we were supposed to do this like memorial show in Coney Island. And I just never made it to those shows because I got burnt to a crisp, and I ended up, you know, on life support. And then eventually the circus community like found out about it, and everybody did these fundraisers, and it was just like so beautiful. But I was in a coma, so I didn't know. So that's kind of like what the first documentary was. And then the second one, when I got out of the hospital, I had the idea that I always wanted to see Asia, and I had never seen it. I'd never been to Asia. So one of my things when we first got out was like, okay, well, we have to go to India and we have to go to Japan. And so we ended up planning this trip around the world where we started off in America. We went through Europe, then we flew to India, and then we went to Tokyo. And, you know, there's street magicians in India that we met, that we got some amazing shows from them, and they showed us some cool magic, and then they sent us up to the Himalaya mountains, like where they had connections, and just, you know, showed us a real good time. We took a bus like from Delhi all the way up to Kulu and Manali and the Himalaya mountains, and it was just wild. We went to Tokyo, did all these performances with like vampire people and, you know, just weird Tokyo freaks and stuff. And then ended up going to California right after that, where we had our bus. Somebody had driven our bus from Philadelphia to California. And so our bus was there, and we toured up all of California and back to Philadelphia. So we went completely around the world. And so we made a documentary about that. In 2018, we put it out. It took us from 2012, when we made the documentary, to 2018, like, was that 6 years to actually make the thing and put it out. And so then when we put that out, I was working at Coney Island in the sideshow, in the grind show. And there was a filmmaker from PBS, and he was making a documentary about Coney Island called Keeping a Dying Art Form Alive, and they were interviewing everybody in the cast. His name's Steve Thompson, and so Steve and I became really good friends, like in the process of making this Coney Island documentary. And I told him about the other documentaries that we made, and I said, you know, in 2020, I really want to make a documentary where we go to every continent, including Antarctica, and just take our circus to every continent of the world, just to, you know, one up our around the world documentary, you know. And he was like, sure, I'll go with you, I'll do it. And so we started doing it, and we started preparing it in 2019. And so when 2020 came, we started our tour, and we went all through Europe, through 7 countries. And we started filming this documentary, and we're like making all the plans, how we're going to go to Australia, and we're going to go to South Africa, and, you know, we're going to go to Argentina, and then we're going to go to Antarctica from there. And, you know, anyway, then the pandemic came, and after our big tour, it was like everything dropped off, and like we just kept making the documentary. And so now, you know, it's 2025. And so, you know, 6 years since 2019 when we started, we're almost done making this documentary, and it's called Dark Imagination Party. And it's just like, it's about like when things go wrong and you just keep going.
Yeah.
You just make something totally new. And you know, it's on the final stages where we're like, we've got a big edit of it, and we're just trying to like hone it and like really get other people's opinions and trying to make it really shine. And you know, it's weird when you're working on a book or like a big movie or something, and it's like you've taken it almost as far as you can, and then you need that outside
Absolutely.
eyes. And I think that's where you're at right now with
my book project, yeah.
with your book.
Yeah, that's
Did you
right.
change the name of the book?
Well, the name is who knows what it's going to be when it actually comes out. But at the moment, it's called Facing the Other Way.
Right. It's not called Way of the Showman. It's called Facing the Other Way.
Yeah, well, it's called Facing the Other Way, subtitle Towards the Philosophy of Showmanship.
Right.
Which means that when you read those two things together, it says Facing the Other Way Towards the Philosophy of Showmanship.
Right.
So,
And what does it mean to face the other way to you?
well, I believe it is the foundational mode of human relation that a performer takes part in. We stand in front of a group of people, and when I'm looking for what is the most foundational thing we can say about what we do, like a performer, because you so easily get lost in all the details of, well, he could do magic, or she could do burlesque, or she could do acrobatics, or he could do sword swallowing. But all of those are less than what it is. I was looking for the kind of archetypal performer or whatever, and I was looking for what that was, and then I found this piece of text that I had written, and that was in it, this thing. A showman is someone who faces the other way. Because when I say that, it's because I did it as a poem in a show in 2012.
Right.
It was 2011, actually. Anyway.
And I can see that. I can see that so clearly because you are facing the other way from the audience.
So when I say that, I say it in the poem because also like I wanted to create a show where I wanted to really, this stuff that I was talking about before, about pointing to what I do in such a way that you look at it with different eyes. To do something really ridiculous, but by the framing of it, make you think that there's something more deeper going on here. And I wanted to do that I did some acts first to get them laughing and get everything there, and then I did this poem, and I wanted to, and it starts with that line. What is a show? What is a showman? A showman is someone who faces the other way. But what does that mean? I mean, this is a showman. Oh, well, I turn around with my back towards them, and I just say, well, this is not a showman. But this, and I turn around, I put the big face on, this is a showman, throw some confetti, and then they laugh and they clap. And then the poem goes on, or whatever. But that image, I'm then asking, what does that mean? Like, because it's not just us who do that. Teachers do it as well.
Yeah.
And in almost any kind of religious connection, or a religious project, you also have often one facing the other way. And
right, and yet the best ones are also entertainers. They're not just lecturers or
that's right,
like teachers, priests, or something like that.
So now you are immediately tuning into the richness of this image, because from that you get, but we are, if it, because as soon as I thought that, then I thought, okay, well, a showman is someone who faces the other way. Then the poem goes on, and I don't need to go into all that because it's so much whatever detail, but just that initial image, and immediately when I looked at that, I go, well, in that case, well, my first thought was also, well, in that case, then it's no different than a teacher or no different than a priest. So I'm going, that's not good. But then I'm actually going, no, that is actually really good. Because I also believe that the roots of what we do can be found in shamanism. I believe that thread is there. And we have the power. So then I go, this figuration here of the showman, one facing the other way, has the capacity to utilize these different elements. What the religious is doing for people, we have that as a potential lying in us. We don't all actualize it. The person making balloon animals in a shopping center don't lean into the spiritual aspects of what we do, but it's there before our characters separated out and became just the entertainer or just the teacher or just the, whilst they are all springing from the same thing and we are dealing with the same stuff. A general talker or presenter is not just about saying something. It's about how you say it. Some are incredibly popular and some have great information, but you need to really want the information to get it. So then we start from this simple picture. You also go, well, if all these are showmen in some person, a human being with something to show, somebody who faces, which has something to share with the others. Because as the poem goes on, he calls for attention and has something to show when he gets it. It's like if you just call for attention 20 times and you have nothing to show, you will eventually be shunned or attacked even if you don't have anything, because you're asking for you're breaking other people's attention by whatever means, and it's
undeserved attention. Yeah.
And if you're in a tribe, that will be remembered, and you're going, this guy is really annoying. He's always going, hey guys, look at me, and then they look at you and you got nothing to do, and then eventually you've cried wolf and they don't look at you when you need it.
You lost respect.
So so this actual image is sort of where it's and I have this quote from Goethe that he goes, it's like about finding a pregnant point from which much can be derived. He was talking about botany at the time, of like he saw this thing of the shape of flowers that taught him a whole lot about nature or whatever. And I feel like this image of the one facing the other way, so the book is an evolution of that. The book is actually taking the 10 kind of verses, if you could call it that, of this poem, and I'm unpacking all of those 10. And in a sense, the reason why it's called Facing the Other Way was that I do have the feeling that if you talk about what the way of the showman is, it would be more connected to how to be something, or what it is like to be it in life, whilst this book is so specifically philosophical that I feel like the title, The Way of the Showman, is sort of how to be a performer in the world. That's somehow I feel like that could be another book.
It also seems to have a double meaning, facing the other way. It's not just, turning the other direction that the audience is. It's like a lifestyle, where you're almost walking your own path. You're facing the other way from, you're going off the beaten path, and you're going down this whole other road, living out of a bag, and, having your adventures as a showman and gaining wisdom on that path. And also, I think all those things are connected by this storytelling that people have always done since prehistory.
Yeah.
That unites us, in our imagination, and the whole idea of playing as art and all that is there. So I see that.
So, and then I talk about what the show is, because he calls for attention, and then there's a few stanzas about what the show is, and then I talk about what is that? What is this mode of relation which we human beings can do, so that we It's a show is not wholly me. I present some stuff out there, but the people who make it come alive is the audience. There is a non-trivial difference between me practicing in this empty room and what happens, because my art is kind of not there. And in the chapter there, I talk specifically sort of about magic, because that's kind of the most within our sort of allied arts. It's the one thing that if there's no audience there isn't actually any magic happening, because I know what's going on. If I put the coin in this hand or pretend to take it in this hand, but it stays in the other one, there's no magic, because I know what's going on. So I don't experience the magic. So there needs to be somebody there so that's that sort of element where, like, it's the same in storytelling and all the other things, but in magic it's so clear that, of course, I know what's going on. So there's the method and the effect, and I'm still always seeing the method, and the effect just sort of it is not actually there until we're there. And so any artwork, I believe, actually that is the case. It's like if the painting is hanging there, if nobody's looking at it, it's art in potential. It gets actualized and comes alive as an artwork, doing the work part of the art, which is being done when I'm looking at the painting and letting the image come alive in me and make me feel emotions, makes me think thoughts, makes me want to change my life or whatever. Like you go, oh my God, this has changed how I see things. So and that's the work that comes. And as soon as I turn away, I now bring that with me, and that interaction, like an interaction with any human being or whatever, that comes with me. So now it is alive in us in a way. Much like our shows just disappear. Once we're finished, then the show is gone. But it lives on in me. One part of it lives on in me, and the other part lives on in the people who saw it.
Yeah, and it's alive. And we found out during the pandemic that, the audience is so much more important than we could have even believed, even though we know how important they are. When the audience is gone and we're, trying to do a virtual show in our living room, to an audience that maybe is on Zoom or something like that, it's like, wow, this is a totally different thing. And when we were making our documentary, we were doing virtual shows, and it was like, we figured, oh yeah, we'll put some of these virtual shows in the documentary, or at least make it like, part of it. But it kind of led to, we don't have this live feeling anymore. So what are we going to do? So we started making these like short films within our little bubble of people that could interact. We would, go to abandoned buildings and start playing around and making movies, and it was pretty cool. But it's definitely not the same as that electric live show with a big enthusiastic audience. Yeah. You go into the darker side of yourself sometimes. When you don't have that outlet, sometimes like, the ghosts and the demons in your head kind of catch up to you when you're just sitting there, like waiting for to do your thing.
Yeah.
And but it's cool because a lot of times you need to have that space to be faced with some of your traumas, so that you're not running from them, that you can actually face them and then try to make some art out of that.
Absolutely. I mean, the first draft of this book, which I put out, the ideas in it, they're completely transformed now in this book that I'm writing now. But this is the manuscript of what is the season 2 of my podcast. It's a 20, 30 episodes or so where I'm talking through all of these ideas, but they're sort of, at that point, they're more sort of like, here's one thing and here's the next. There was, of course, a structure to it in my mind at that point too, but I wrote that, and it was a big document, and there was a lot of stuff, and then I got feedback from things, from people listening to the episodes and all that, so many of these ideas are at least as germs already in this podcast, from episode 23 till about 40 or so. I can't remember the exact number, but there's these episodes come out and I'm talking about these ideas, and then I have reframed it all and boiled it down and made it more clear, like what it is that I'm thinking. So but my point being there was that all of this happened during the pandemic, so I was thinking these thoughts. So then when I was thinking about the role of, like, well, because from that simple starting point you get the showman and then you get the audience, and then in between them somehow you have the show, and then the whole thing comes alive with them paying attention to each other. So you have the show, and then you have the showman, and then you have the eye that is looking at it, and then that's because that's
the triangle,
the triangle with the eye inside it, which is part of the logo of the podcast. So that's the thing.
And the podcast. That's your creative process right there to work on your ideas, to hone them into a book.
Yeah. So that's but the fact that I was not getting to meet my audience, any audience, then made it so clear the important role that they had. Because up until then, there was always an audience here and there, and you sort of it changed the depth of how much I appreciated and missed and wanted and saw what their role in who I am. So I no longer, I think that the showman is actually just a part of a process. I am not the sole lone genius just delivering my art. It's like I'm actually nothing if I'm not part of it. Like how some wood kindling comes together with some kind of ignition, and then you get a fire. Each one of those on their own are nothing. Like, I mean, they are. Each one is a thing in itself.
There's something, but they're not the
but
thing
when you
that
come
they
together,
will be.
they become something else. It's
Yeah.
like you get the showman, the audience, and then you do the show, and or like the attention, and then you get the show as an additional thing, which is not like anything else that exists in the world. So, anyway, I think, and then this is the artistic process again. It's like coming back to that. What are the aspects of the artistic process that happens again and again? And I think it is this constant revising or so, but like I work really hard on something. I work really hard on one of the verses of the poem, which is one of the chapters of the 10 chapters. And then I work really hard on that and to make the pieces and to make that. And then I work on the next chapter and the next chapter and the next, or the sentence and page. And then once I've done with that, I go, okay, you've written your first draft or third draft or whatever, and you go, there you go, I've just gone through it, it's done, this is sweet. And then if that happens with the whole book, but then you look through it and you go, oh, this is like, oh, this doesn't, and this hangs together.
Does it make sense?
It doesn't make sense, or like
does it have the connections that you want? Can everyone understand it? You know.
So then you got to go back and you got to rethink it, and then there are mistakes in there. But sometimes the mistakes or the confusion that I didn't see was there makes me see, well, this page and that page somehow in the span of these 5 pages, I have slightly changed what it was that I wrote about. Like, as you start on the stream of consciousness and then you tune it, and because it takes so long to write each page, it might be you wrote these previous pages 3 days ago, or like, well, so you tuned it, and then you realize, oh, there's actually a little bit of discrepancy here. Not like you start writing about apples and then by the end you're writing about oranges. It's not, you've changed the subject, but you're into a subtly different thing. And then I might look at it and I go, well, this is kind of a mistake, but you also go, but they both make sense. So now there's 5 more little details that needs to find what's their relationship, or how did this happen, or whatever. So sometimes the actual writing process is me reading. I write what I think I'm saying, and then I read it back, and I'm going like, oh, there's more here. And then when you do the next and the third draft, you sort of try to make it seem like I thought all of these things from the beginning, but some of it comes from the process of engaging with my own work and mistakes or whatever. And then make some changes, and I sometimes have novel recombinations too, where I just go, well, I wrote that to be in here, but actually has an element of audience in it because it doesn't fit in a place, these 2 pages or whatever. And then you go, I can put it in here, and then you got to slightly rewrite it, and then whole new things comes out of that. So I think those are all kind of elements that I think are part of the creative process of working really hard on something and then let it go for a while, and then you go back and revisit it, and you get more ideas, or you start to actually see stuff that is clearly what it's about, but that you didn't know, or that wasn't your instigation for writing it or so, and mistakes, and then recombinations, that all this is part of the process, that all of a sudden when I'm writing something, you just go, oh, this is similar to this gag that I used to do. And then you see sort of how that mirrors it or whatever. So it's, as much as the process is like you sit down on a blank page, it's never that, because it comes with your whole history of failed and successful and one-offs and or whatever, so that you bring that into the writing process.
Yeah, there's a lot of unconscious stuff that comes, sort of floats up into what you're working on. And that's why, stream of conscious writing and improv and things like that for live performances is really important. You can't rely on it 100% because there's going to be imperfections in it. So if you're trying to make a greater work, or something like along the lines of a monument or something like that, you can't have these little imperfections in it, and but those imperfections, they really make the thing entertaining.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to lose that. You want to kind of keep this cool stream of consciousness feeling to your philosophical writing, but you want your writing to be like on point. You don't want any mistakes in it necessarily. So that's the hard part about making a greater work.
Yeah, and when you make writing, writing, as we both are doing, it's a different kind of thing too, because you write one object, and then that object is the artwork, so to speak, and that's a little bit different than the shows, because the shows are constantly evolving, because I have to actually be there and do it for it to come into being. So the act that I do is not any one each act. Each time I perform, it's another incarnation of the same thing, because it doesn't actually exist unless I do it. But the book, in a different way, sort of lies there and is an invitation for the performer, or for the reader to engage with what you have to share or whatever. So you have to put more work into it being like the definitive version, in a sense. Well, it's the performance, you can always go, oh, that's a good idea, add to that. So when you see the act 2 years later, it has all the additional stuff in it, or the changes or whatever. But the book, that needs to sort of, you can do a rewrite or a re-edit or whatever, but
sure you could.
But normally it's sort of like you move on to write another book that tells a different story instead, or like that shares different ideas, as opposed to continually rewriting the same book to make it reflect how you are now or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But that thing is supposed to stand the test of time, and it's supposed to be something that you look back at and you're like, wow, that's exactly what I meant to say. It's not like an open mic night. What do you call it? I'm getting some interference here. Hold on a second. I worked it out.
So interesting to talk to another person that actually writes as well. As you were going through and writing your book, in one way you sort of think, it's a different process to write a book, because it's like it goes from the beginning to the end in the sense of the story.
Straight.
But
straight through.
And when I'm writing about my ideas or whatever, you need to find a different kind of framework. But at the same time, your book also has like a framing device, and it's like it's not just a random, like it tells the stories, but each time when you tell a story, you can tell it with an emphasis on something different. So
exactly, and I had to find the beginning and the end. That was also a big challenge, because sometimes you start writing, in the middle, and you don't even know what your conclusion is going to be, because it's just a story that you're writing, and you hadn't really even considered the ending. And if it's a story about your own life, and that ending hasn't even happened yet, because the story takes like 20 years to write, eventually you have to be like, hey, there's a point where this story has to end. I have to find the conclusion, and in my case it was like, okay, the house fire and the recovery from that, and the idea of like getting ready to go around the world was the end of my book. It was like, okay, I survived, and now I'm going to try and do my dream that I had when I was in the coma, And the beginning of the story is obviously like, I get carried away with the spirit of the circus sideshow by random encounters with other performers, and they bring me into the world. But it's like, how do you get that hook? How do you start the story in a way that's going to bring everybody in and want to listen to your story, And then there's other problems, like who's my audience? How am I going to get people to read this book, or is it just going to get a life of its own, and I'm not going to have to worry about that? It'll just kind of happen. That those are other parts of the creative process. Is like, what do you do after the book is done? You're writing the book, and it's taken you so long, and it's such a thing that you always think about and go back to, and then you finally get it there, and then you get past all the editing and all the fine tuning and everything, and you're like, okay, I've got a book. Now how do I launch it into the world? Like what's the next step, and how do we promote it, and what's going to happen there? And you have to be creative with that as well, and have fun with it, because otherwise it becomes this big chore. And it can really drain a lot of your enthusiasm if you don't think about it the right way.
So how have you been dealing with that for the last because it's been maybe a year or so?
It's been about a year, and what's cool is the publisher, Outside Talker Press is the name of the publishing company, and they've done a pretty good job. Of course, I always think we could all do better at like getting the word out and selling the book, so to speak, but they've done a really good job at making like a collection of books, because the first book that they put out is called The Rise and Fall of the Sideshow Geek. And it's all about the history of geeking and everything. And then my book came out, which is Memoirs of a Coney Island Clown, JellyBoy's Sideshow Saga. And then a third book came out, which is all about natural-born freaks. And it's called Natural Born, The Art of Being Human. And it's about the modern circus movement embracing the natural born as a main element of sideshow, and how to navigate that through the controversial history of it, and how to celebrate the freakiness of sideshow and natural born sideshow performers. And I was in that book, which is cool because the writer had asked me to help them find some of the people, and I knew a lot of natural-born freaks from working at Coney Island. And when I was casting director there, I had like 5 natural-born freaks in the cast, and so that book came out. and I got a little chapter in it. And then I was also in this other book this year about sword swallowing that Dan Meyer wrote, or Dan Meyer.
To the hilt.
And he made To the Hilt. Yeah, he made that with Mark Hartzman, and who did the Sideshow Encyclopedia. And so it was cool to like be in these other people's books. And so that's one of the things I've been trying to do, is like get into the world and talk about my book by being interconnected with other artists, you know. So I want to be on podcasts like this one, for instance, and the To the Hilt podcast, and some other ones that I've been on this year, and be in other shows and other people's writing and stuff like that, and like be a part of a movement, you know, because it's almost like you can't just do it alone. You have to be a part of a greater community if you want to get the word out. Otherwise, you're just in your own little bubble. Yeah. So in that way, I think that's a lot of fun.
It's so fun.
You know, the social aspect of it.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I have enough anxiety that I just sort of am happy to be in my bubble and having these conversations with people on the podcast. And every now and then when you go out into the world, you meet other people who have listened to a bunch of the episodes or ardent followers of The Way that really listens to almost
really
everything.
Cool.
And someone meeting them maybe for the first time, but the conversation that you get into is just next level. That goes... last year I got to go together with Nick the Fat. We went to Los Angeles and met up with Mike Cavaney, which is an incredible magician. Has a great career of doing magic, and very funny and very cool the stuff that he does. But he's also a publisher of magic books, and he is a historian of magic. And so I knew about him. And his lovely wife, Tina Leonard, who is also an incredible artist, who did an act that I saw that I happened to have on VHS because it was recorded off TV or whatever. So I had her act and I could see it several times. And then I was there in their living room and we were just chatting or whatever. And I started saying some story or whatever. And then she goes, "Oh yeah, I remember you said this on your podcast." And then turned out they were both listened to the podcast and knew some of the stories, and it changed my life. And then I was staying there a few months ago, and I was in LA again, staying at their beautiful house in Pasadena. And then he was showing me something in his workshop, and then in the workshop, taped on one of the shelves or whatever, was one of the stickers. So my logo was on the wall and inside there, and that just stuff that you go, you meet someone and they already kind of know you a little bit by having listened to it. And I need to do what you're doing as well, of going to seeking out these people and going, "Hey, you guys should talk to me on your podcast," because people are interested in.
Definitely, like when the time comes, you know, when your book is ready, you should totally be doing that.
Good point.
And I think I'm sure you will. But and the book is probably, I would imagine, it's almost ready. Like within this year, maybe in 2026, we might see it come into the world, right?
Yeah. My hope was that it was going to come out this year. But things just takes time. And then I got to Jay Gilligan, my friend, who knows how I think and everything. So he is taken on. He has somebody who's as good at juggling at that. It's like he has the capacity to really delve into and look at. And he, of course, is a native speaker as well. So I need help with certain parts of the English language or whatever, and just to have somebody that reads it, takes it serious enough and pays attention to it, to ask you the questions and all that. So he's gone above and beyond, and we did a lot of work on it. And then he read it all, the previous, actually the draft that I sent to you, and then he read it. He was the first one. I sent it to just 3 or 4 people, and then he was the first one to actually finish it and engage with it, is sort of going through it like that. And through some lengthy discussions in the night, we were like, I realized that I needed to change the voice a little bit, and also like through these conversations narrowed the book further down to what it's actually about, which meant that when you go, sorry?
To one voice instead of, sometimes you have several voices that you write in.
Yeah. And the different topics or whatever that I go, oh, they're all interesting topics. But that doesn't mean that in a boiled down, you want to have the book say one thing, because the book is like an act. There's not, even though I think about lots of things and lots of skills and whatever, not everything fits into one act, and not everything even fits into necessarily to one show. You might be doing it in a certain... So I'm having to learn that now. I'm going, yeah, but I love this thought or this section. And then I realized going, yeah, but it is actually straying outside of what the poem has given us. So now if I promise you that in the beginning, that's what this book is, we need to adhere to that, or else have very good justifications for why this project goes off on a tangent. Like if any tangent is going to happen, it needs to be justified or whatever. So going deeply into it with him as my editor has been really good. And the book is now... I'm going to flip it up right now. It is 67,000 words, 207 pages. And that's down from when I sent it to you. It was 86,000. So it's now 20,000 pages, no, 20,000 words less. And it's almost 60, it's like 53 pages shorter at this point.
Right. Yeah. So, I cut 50 pages out of my book, which I kind of painful to do in a way. But sometimes you have to make those big decisions, because, you know, if you have a 400-page book and a publisher says, hey, you know, this book would be a lot better if it was 250 pages, and you end up having to cut that much out, you really have to make those hard choices and say, oh, what is the story? Yeah. And what's the tangent? And what tangents are worth keeping, and what tangents do you have to kind of, you know, say goodbye to? Yeah. And what characters are worth keeping, and which characters are kind of secondary characters. As cool and as much as you love them, sometimes you have to be like, yeah, I really can't do that, because it takes away from the flow of where this story is going. Yeah,
because you start to write it, and then you have an idea of where it could go, and it's in your mind. It could be anything. But then as you write it, the story starts to, it's not just like random shit in a row. Everything is connected. So once you've said A and you've said B and you've said C, then you can't just say random other things. There's certain things that like the story actually becomes a thing in itself, and what you're telling, and the project is in a reciprocal relationship with it, because I read it and I'm going, now I see this doesn't belong or whatever, and you end up with a gem, because it starts out as this unformed raw diamond or whatever, and then you cut you cut the facets off, and after a while you start to see the pattern of it, and you're going, it needs to be like shaped round on this side too, because I've made it round on the other side. So you start to also see the thing as a thing in itself, and it's also guiding you a little bit, telling me what it wants to be.
Right, like what's the shape that the words are creating, you know?
So that's interesting. I'm writing, and all these thoughts that you have, and you go, well, I'm going to write one book and everything is going to be in it. And then, of course, it can't be. So
you can't.
So that just opens it up for the next act, or the next show that you have to make, or the next book that you have to write, or the next conversation or podcast.
Yeah, all those little things that are still on the shelf. They're on the shelf for a reason, you know. They might get discarded and thrown to the trash heap, but they also might just sit around with all the other weird odds and ends that you've got.
And like my failure at doing a slapstick microphone chaos thing, that turned out to be the best thing that I could have done. It wasn't actually a failure. It was just that it didn't belong in that act. When I then put it in during the same season, it was the wrong place or whatever. And then it turned out to be the greatest mistake made triumph that I've done, because that was the bit where it went from being a funny contortion routine with jokes and whatever to being the physical comedy kind of thing that it is now. That has basically been how I have made my career. That's like my greatest hit or whatever. So for as much as you can say, well, that was a failure, it kind of wasn't, because I know that thing existed as potential, ready to find its way into the world in a new form, and when it did, it was a good thing. So all of the 50 pages that you took out of your book that I haven't read, I'm looking forward to reading it. And also Outside Talker Press, as you're talking about those other books, I'm like, God, I'll get right on the internet and order those. I want to know about the rise and fall of the geek, and I certainly want to know about the book written about natural born freaks at this point in time where that issue is so complex or complicated or so and great for you to be in that sort of popping up in the other books, because that I have loved that from when we were talking about last time, talked about Freaks on Fire. That book, how it mentions people that I found through that, and how in the Beat generation, how Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs and Jack Kerouac are all kind of connected, and they lived in a flat at one point, and then they go and have a big party, and then the Hells Angels come to the party. But at that party, writing a book about the Hells Angels is some young journalist who's taken time off to write a book about the Hells Angels. So at that same party with all of these people here is Hunter Thompson coming in, and those two books, his book Hells Angels writes about this party, and Ken Kesey, the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Tests, they both write about that same party, but they're both writing about a trip that they're on that coincides, and that sort of stuff. That really gets me excited. And you're doing that now, like weaving yourself into these books, making a mark.
Right, and we don't know, who it's going to affect, whose ears it's going to reach, what's going to happen, but we're all doing it at the same time, and it's happening now. Who knows what's going to happen in history? 50 years.
Oh, that's exciting. Hey, man, I gotta start getting ready to go and do some shows, face the other way to a whole bunch of people.
Perfect timing. My battery's about to die, so
great.
I think.
Hey, thanks so much for reaching out again. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in real life at some point.
Yeah, one of these days we've got to really cross paths.
Yeah, we want to go to Iceland, so we should maybe make that happen. I got some other friends there as well, so it would be great to see you one time, maybe there, or if you come and by Norway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, it would be excellent to go to Iceland. I haven't been there for a very long time, since 1994 maybe, when I was writing my last year's thesis on the ancient gods of the Scandinavian gods. Then I went there, but lots have changed probably. It would be good to see. But anyway, thanks for following along this far. If you've already gotten all the way here, then as a reward you'll get to be able to click subscribe for free, so you can get my podcast down into your app, because nothing makes me more exciting. It makes me more excited than when I see the subscriber episodes going down, so that I know that there are people out there who catch on straight away. That's so exciting for me. And if not, then sign up to click on YouTube. Actually, you can't click on YouTube, but you can find the episodes on YouTube. I've been struggling for some time to make The Way of the Showman channel, but I've had some issues with verifying that I am indeed who I say I am. So at the moment, all 150 plus episodes can be listened to on YouTube, and I know there's a few people who listen on YouTube, even though the majority are listening to just the words. So there's lots of ways to find The Way of the Showman, but the best way possible to find a way of the showman is if you tell someone you care about and say, give us an endorsement. Say that we're good. Tell them to check us out. Some of the people we're going to talk about coming up next have arrived as guests on this podcast through the referral of a friend. That's how Matt King arrived as a guest on the podcast, and that is how Clay Hillman will tell us the stories of KC Bonkers. And we'll dive into the mysteries of play. All that, through a friend saying, you might enjoy this podcast. And the next thing you know, they are converted into the way of the showman, following along every episode. So, until next time, take care of yourself and those you love. And I hope to see you along the way.